Hey there, it's been a while. So today I was working on something and I kind of just decided I wanted to make a video about it. So we're going to go over creating collectibles that once they are picked up, they do not respawn. It doesn't necessarily have to be collectibles, it can just be one-time only items. Um, Or it can be like an overarching collectible, like coins you put on the ground, and you want them to show up the first time a player goes into a level, but if they leave and come back, you don't want them to be able to pick up that same item again. So, what we've got here, we've got a collectible. I've just called it BP Magic Shard. And then this is a child blueprint off of that one. And then I've created two maps. They're identical to each other basically, um, just with the items in different places so you can see the differences kind of. So we've got all these. I'm just going to pull off some of these in the middle here. Go to the other map. Gonna grab some of these. Go back. And you see it did not respawn those. So grab some more. Just gonna grab all of these on the left side here. I should have made it less, but I kind of wanted to show it works at scale. Level reopened. Those are still missing. I'll grab some of the child ones this time, all of them. And then I'll grab all of these on the right again. So there we go. So it picked up the childs. None of them are respawning. The only ones left are the ones I haven't picked up. I'll leave that one. So go back. Those are still there. Go back. Just that one. So basically, all of that's going to be recorded in the game instance. And as long as the game is open, it will all get recorded there and remembered. And every time you go back to a previous level, those items just won't be there. That way you can't double collect items. Um, I'm not going to go over the save game process for this. So if you want someone to be able to like close the game, reopen it, and come back, uh, those items are still gone. I'll briefly go over it, but I'm not going to create all the blueprints and everything for it. So to do that, to do this at the base most level, you'll need two things. You will need the instance for your game, and you will need the blueprint that actually is the collectible. I also created a child blueprint just to show that it works. This one does not have anything new in it. It's just a pure child. Just to show that it works out of the box basically. If you've never created an instance before, um, all you really need to do is create a new blueprint class, and then in here, just type in instance, or you can type in game instance. We're looking for this. You'll just click this, and you'll click this, and it'll create a new instance for you. Now, inside of this, oh, I'm actually going to delete these. I was testing something earlier. We're not using those. Um, let's go ahead and leave it blank for now. The only thing I would recommend maybe adding in at this moment is this change levels and open level name. To change maps or to change levels, you will need to open levels. And in any game, I typically like to have this set up inside the game instance itself. You can reference it from outside the game instance like this, but I like it to occur in the game instance. That way I can do any game saves or anything inside the instance as well. So this is just a custom event I did. Change levels, and then if you come off of here and you type in open level by name, and then I just plugged this directly into that, and it'll create this little input here for you automatically. Oh, if you've never created a instance before, the other thing you're going to have to do, in order for the game to know you're using the instance, you're going to have to go to Maps and Modes, and down here inside the project settings, you have to change the game instance to whichever one you're using. So the default one that Unreal Engine uses, if you just open up any project, it'll be this game instance. If you're making your own game, I typically recommend creating a game instance for yourself. You have to, pretty much. How early you do it is up to you, but I always make a game instance pretty early on so that I can start putting logic into it. And then you can also create your own game mode. That's kind of a different subject, but you'll want to do that as well. Inside the game instance, or the dungeon instance in my case, this one we're not using for this. It's something else I have. You'll want to create a variable. I just named it collectible unique ID. I didn't mean to put spaces there. I usually don't like to. And then you'll want to do a string and then change it to an array. Depending on how large your game is, you may want to separate these out by level using either a data table or some other method. This is just the most straightforward way to do it, either for prototyping or depending on the size of your game. If it's smaller, you could just keep it this way, realistically. On very, very large games, this will cause a slight performance hitch when loading a new level. So for us now, though, it's not that big of a deal. Like you can collect all the items. At most, right now, it's like 50, like 55 or something between both levels. So the logic doesn't really cause a hitch, but the larger this array gets, the more of a hitch it'll cause down the line. So just something to keep in mind. If you're not using a ton of collectibles, it's not a big deal. If you have a lot, like I'm talking hundreds or thousands, then you'll probably want to come up with an alternative way to separate them out by level. But okay, so for the magic shard, this is the parent collectible that I'm using. The first thing you want to do is, I did it in the construction script. You'll get the current level name. You can just type get current level name like that. Off of here, you'll just get the name. You can just pull off here, append it like that. And then I did a reference to self inside the magic object. You get object name, and then you append that to the first. This separates them out by level. So your objects will be, in my case, it's dungeon test map 1 underscore and then the name of the object, which separates them by level, obviously. So I'll have dungeon test map 1 BP magic shard 2, and then I will have dungeon test map BP magic shard 2, and they won't interfere with each other. So then you just come off here. I just did a straight promote to variable and then named it collectible unique ID. and then I printed it to string so I could see it on the left side of the screen. I'll get rid of that, but you might want to do it just so you can make sure there's no inconsistencies when you're building it out. In the event graph on the magic shard, I just did destroy collectible. It's a custom event, so you can just hit create. Oh, mess that up. Custom event. I named it destroy collectible. And then you just come off here and type in destroy actor and put this here. And then let's talk about this for a second. So for the actual item, I just have a basic cone right now and then a sphere just to check for the player overlap. I have on component begins overlap the sphere, which you can get by just clicking sphere. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, right here you've got on component begin overlap. If you click this, normally it's a plus sign, but once you've added it to your graph, it becomes this, and it'll create this. You pull off other component, you can just type equal, and it'll do equal, like that. You pull, well, you don't want to pull off this. What you actually want to do is get player character, and then I typically do capsule component. There's usually only one of these, and this serves as like the base character collision, so it's a good thing to go off of. And then you just tie it into the equal sign. This way it doesn't get triggered by any other components on the character, just the capsule component. So you don't have to worry about double triggers or anything else like that. I'll delete all that. So then you go over to branch. If this is true, then you'll take the dungeon instance. Well, you'll create that up here, but you'll take as dungeon instance. You'll pull off it. You'll do the collectible ID, which we created earlier in here. And then you'll pull off this and you'll do add. So it adds the collectible ID on this object into the array. Delete that. And then you destroy it, so it destroys itself. So adds the collectible ID and then it destroys itself. I'm going to go back up to begin play here. So when the level loads and the object loads, the first thing we're going to do is cast to our instance. So we created our own instance, whatever name you have for it. If it's just game instance or if it's related to your game, in my case, it's cast to dungeon instance. Delete that. And then you'll pull off object and type in get game instance. This just checks that it is the right instance. So this is whatever you put in the project settings, like I went over earlier. It's just verifying it's right. If that works, I went ahead and pulled off here and I promoted it to a variable. I did that so when I go down here, it has the instance ready so it can destroy itself if the player picks it up. And it doesn't have to recast to it. It's not too big of a performance loss, but it is one since you're already casting to it when it's created. There's no reason to do it again later. And then it does check collectibles. So technically the route we're doing is all the objects are created when the level loads. And then the collectibles ask the game instance if they have already been collected. If they have, then they destroy themselves. If they haven't, then they do nothing and they wait for the player to come pick them up. Or basically they just do nothing. So as game instance, you do check collectibles, which is this function I created. If you've never created a function before, you can just hit plus, create a new function. I named it check collectibles. And then we'll take the collectibles unique ID and we'll pull it off and do a for each loop. So it's going to check every single Well, it's going to start from the top and go down in the array. It's going to check every single one. And if it does find the same one, then it's going to send that information back to the magic shard, which then tells it to destroy itself. So right here, check collectibles at the beginning. You'll want to do a plus, and then search off here. And for me, it's just magic shard. I'd recommend naming it uh, something that indicates it's like the base collectible. So you could do like BP underscore collectible base, something like that. And then you'll just parent off of that. So you'll have a bunch of children that are their own thing, but you only need to reference the parent. So you don't need to reference any of the children. We're just referencing the parent. With the way Unreal Engine works, if you just reference the parent, all the children can still plug into this pin. It's just how Unreal Engine works. So BP Magic Shard is the parent. Once you have that target, you can just pull that off and you'll be pulling the collectible ID that's inside Magic Shard, this one right here. So, and then it'll just check it. And then you'll want to make sure you plug that target back into destroy collectible at the end here, which is this event we made. Okay, so that's pretty much everything. If you want to save the information in a save game object, so they close the game, they reopen it, and you want those collectibles to still know what's what, the only information you need to save is this collectible ID array. This is what gets updated when the player picks up an object. So whenever a player picks up an object, right here we just add it to the array and then we destroy ourselves. What you would probably want to do in order to save the game so it remembers it from game to game is you'd probably want to set up an event inside the actual dungeon instance itself, or update it and then maybe add another event right here. So maybe this function could be for saving the collectible information. So you'd take the save game and you'd plug the, whenever the string gets updated, you'd then take it and then you would save this string to the save game, overwrite the one that's currently there. And on the next time you load, you would just want to take the save game's collectible unique ID and plug it back into your game instance. So when the game loads, it pulls the save game info, it overwrites the collectible unique ID inside the game instance, and then when the map loads, you've got all the information you need already, and the objects will just destroy themselves when they're created. I don't need this function. I'm just going to delete that. Oh yeah, for the children, to kind of prove that they already work just out of the box. So these four are children. I think I showed it earlier, but I take those two, I go to the other level. I'll just pick up that one just because. If I go back, those two are gone. Pick up one more, and I'll pick up these. I missed that one. Here we go. Back in, back. So yeah, just out of the box, that works. You can change the static mesh, it won't affect anything. You can add more logic to them if you want to. Most likely you'll have to for like pickup effects and whatnot. But you can probably program more of that into the parent if you want before you start childing off. This is a very simple run of how you can save that information from one level to the next without, you know, all the information just being reset. You can use that same logic for other stuff. Like if you've got enemies that are one-time kills that you don't want them to come back when you come back to a previous location or something, you can take that same information and you can have it in the inside the enemy. It would probably have to be its own array. You don't want it to be a collectible, obviously. Um, but you can have the enemies check the game instance and see if they've already been killed. And then when they load in, they check and they get rid of themselves. Um, it can also go the other way. There's more complicated ways to do this, but this is just a very, very straightforward way to do it. So, all right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully that helps someone out in the future.